Hi everybody, my name's Patricia Warby of Alchemy Therapies, and I'm going to talk to you tonight about a subject that's close to my heart, and that's something that's actually been happening to me in the last few months and years. Is I have been diagnosed with something called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And that, for those of you who don't know, is an autoimmune condition that attacks the thyroid. So it's my own body attacking my own thyroid. The thyroid is sort of either side of the windpipe here. And symptoms are many and varied, but the main ones are feeling cold, particularly in the winter time. Cold hands and feet is a really important sign. And then weight gain, which has certainly been happening to me. My weight has increased without any change in my diet by about 12% in the last 3 years. And although I'm not overweight, I'm certainly heavier than I'd like to be. Other factors which you may or may not have, for me, I had a lot of issues with dry eyes, so I was getting really sore eyes and quite sort of red and inflamed. And then I also had an issue with getting warm. If I go in somewhere really cold, I just can't heat up. It takes me absolutely ages, and I have to have heat applied to the body in order to do that. And certain hoarseness, I'm definitely noticing that in my voice. And I've been told that this swelling around the neck area here is not just old age. And it's not just flab, it's actually a very tiny goiter, what they call a goiter, which is where your thyroid gland is trying to enlarge to take in as much available nutrients for the production of thyroxine, which is thyroid hormone. So there were a few telltale signs, but of course they creep up quite slowly usually, and so you don't really take any notice until it gets painful or it's interfering with the quality of your life. And a couple of years ago I started to get real kidney pain, where it felt like somewhere in the lower to mid back area, which just made me feel really unwell. And I got tested and they thought probably it was my thyroid. Now my GP does standard testing. They don't have much in the way of innovative testing. They basically, on your first go, they're likely to test your thyroid-free thyroid hormone levels, your T4, which is the inactive thyroid hormone. So it doesn't really tell you much about what's happening inside your cells. It only really tells you how much is floating around in your bloodstream. The other thing they measure is the pituitary prohormone, the one that sort of stimulates your thyroid hormone to produce, stimulates your thyroid gland, to produce thyroid hormone. And so the pituitary is the actual messenger it sends is called TSH, and that's what they measure. And anything over 5, I think 5.3 is considered high, and mine was about 10.8, which is high. It's double what it should be. But actually, to be optimal, it should be under 2. I know that now. And the fact that the standard range is up to 5 is because a lot of people that they've tested are hypothyroid or low thyroid, and so the range is it's sort of skewed towards people who are already very, very high in TSH and low in thyroid hormone. The relationship between those two is that the pituitary has to produce more TSH to get the thyroid to sort of produce thyroid hormone, and so it's sort of like kicking it to, keep going, and so you get higher and higher pituitary hormone. Now, solution, as far as most GPs in the UK and probably most places in the Western model, is to give you something like this, which is artificial T4, sometimes called Synthroid. This one's levothyroxine. It's a synthetic version of T4, and the theory is if you provide enough T4, the body will then convert it into the active hormone and you'll be fine. But I started taking the lowest dose, and I've been increasing and increasing and increasing with very little change in my overall TSH level, which is still, I think the last time I had it tested, it was about 9.6, which is just really high. And I'm on triple dose now. And I'm not feeling any different. I'm not losing any weight. I'm not feeling more energetic. So there's something wrong. So I made the decision a few months ago to, well, first of all, I tried at my GP's, as you do, to get a proper test done, where I measure what I want to know is what's my T3, because that's the active hormone. How is my body converting T4 to T3? What are my T3 levels? In particular, my what they call free T3. And they just won't test me. I don't know what I have to do that. Probably get really ill. Who knows? So I've made the decision instead to go to a specialist. Now I'm having to pay for that. Obviously it's private medicine compared to, the free service provided under the NHS in the UK. So it's a bit annoying, but if you value your health, sometimes you just have to do that. Now, so I've gone to see a doctor who specialises in hormone health, and he's given me a really nice long list of things I have to do. Here it is. Now, some of these things I already knew about. I had researched this obviously way before I went to the doctor. So number one is go gluten-free. Well, I'm pretty much gluten-free anyway. Number two is take a selenium supplement. Now, I had been coming round to that idea, but now I realise how important it is. I'm actually taking selenium. And here's the one I'm taking. This is just the one I happen to prefer because it's a company I have a lot of dealings with and they're very ethical, Cytoplan. But obviously there are many different manufacturers, and I'm taking 200 micrograms of that per day. The other thing, sublingual vitamin B12, so that goes under the tongue, which bypasses any difficult absorption problems you might have. Now, B12 obviously is normally in animal foods, and I don't really eat many animal foods. I've been vegetarian for a long time. I'm not anymore. I eat fish now and occasionally chicken, white meat. But for about 22 years I was vegetarian, thinking that was healthy. But the way I was doing vegetarianism, it wasn't very healthy. I was eating a lot of cheese, a lot of pastry-based products, lentils, that sort of thing. Not that there's anything wrong with lentils, but it was all heavy, stodgy stuff. And I think I've been gradually becoming more and more hypothyroid over the years. I think a lot of it is what happened to me when I was younger. I had my tonsils taken out and my adenoids, which I've since read is a very messy and occasionally damaging operation to have. In the times when I was a child, it was just routine. They took out your tonsils if they kept getting infected, which mine did because I was intolerant to dairy and nobody knew. It's a terrible thing, really, how you get one problem and it leads to a solution which is actually worse than the problem. If I'd been taken off dairy, I'm sure I would have been fine. But anyway, they've caused some damage, I think, and it's possible they've also damaged my thyroid as well. So there's that. There's also the fact that heavy metals are very involved, and my dad was an engineer, and he worked in a sort of factory where they made metal fittings and they ground them, and there was dust everywhere, metal dust. It was on everything. He used to bring it home, obviously on his hair, clothing, and in summer holidays I'd sometimes go and help out there as well when I was in my teenage years. So no doubt heavy metals are in my system, and heavy metal toxicity tends to be attracted to the thyroid. And in order to then release that, your body will attack its own tissue to try and detoxify. So it isn't that your body is unintelligent or that it just goes completely haywire. It's a sort of misunderstanding on the part of the body of what's really happening, and it's sort of overfiring. And that's also very linked to gut. If your gut is out of balance, because most of your immunity is in your gut, then everything starts to go a bit amiss and your immune system starts to overreact. to things in your system. So that's what's been going on. And so the solutions, a pile of supplements. Here they are. This is what I'm taking at the moment. Hopefully it will get less as I gear up my system. I'm going sugar-free pretty much. I haven't been adding sugar to anything for years, and I'm just avoiding sort of ready-made sauces because they're full of sugar usually. I'm taking the B12. I've pretty much eliminated dairy apart from yogurt, because yogurt's pre-digested if it's organic, bio-live, which mine is. I'm eating fish because that's good for the omega-3, and I'm trying to optimize my vitamin D levels. D3 in particular is the one to supplement, but at the moment with summer here in the UK, it's easy to get vitamin D just by going outside for 20 minutes to half an hour without sunscreen. It's really important that you don't slap it straight on, because a lot of people are vitamin D deficient, and your skin makes it, in sunlight. Between, in the sort of summer months in the UK where I live, we have to supplement in the winter months. So it's important to know when, get your vitamin D3 checked if you're in any doubt. Mine's moderate, it's not optimal, but it's certainly not deficient now. And finally, focusing on low glycemic foods, so ones that don't spike your blood sugar. So that's, most carbohydrates do that. White breads, pasta, any sort of flour-based products, and some that you perhaps wouldn't think of. If you're just eating processed foods, they can often be just really bad for your blood sugar because they have hidden sugars in, and you just won't know until you feel a bit sleepy after you've eaten. If you're feeling sleepy when you've eaten, you've probably eaten too many carbohydrates. It's a really good sign that you've had a burst of insulin, which then takes the sugars out of your blood, and that's what deprives your brain and makes you feel a bit dozy and sleepy. So trying to optimize all of those things. And then meanwhile, I'm going to continue with all my supplements, and I've got to get a load of tests done as well, proper testing, so not just the ones that my GP does, but finding out what my T3 levels are like, and also the sex hormones. Progesterone, very linked to thyroid function, and tends to be low when thyroid is running low, and that just doesn't make you feel very good. When women are pregnant, most of the time, if they're not having morning sickness, they feel great because progesterone's really high, and particularly in the third trimester. So there's lots of things that happen in the body that change with hypothyroidism, and Hashimoto's is probably one of the most common, but the root causes have to be dealt with. Nutrient deficiency, toxicity, and just basically stress is another really big factor. So if you're doing something, your life is full of stress, conscious or unconscious stress. In my case, I pretty much thought I'd dealt with mine, but there's obviously clearly something else going on, maybe, that I'm not aware of. So I've got to look at that. Taking time out, being conscious of your limitations energy-wise, resting, having holidays, and doing a job that you love, rather than one that you're tied to, because it's not possible for everybody, but at least if you can't do it for your job, then finding something in your life that you really love outside of your work situation. Okay, well, that's my sort of top 10 tips for hypothyroidism. I'm going to be updating you regularly with how it's all going, and what I hope is when I next talk to you, I'll have my thyroid results, and we'll be able to decide what we're going to do and see if I can reverse or at least stabilize this condition. Bye for now.